organisation, Generations for Peace, and we're going to be thinking about it through sort of four dimensions. The external dimension, what is our actual work in the world as a peace-building organisation, so our global mission all directed at social change and what leadership means in that sense. We're also going to look inside the organisation, which has been on an evolution. So as it's been growing and changing over the years, what has leadership meant and what are the challenges right now? We're also going to be then taking a look sort of behind the veil, based on sort of my experiences of leading the organisation and what am I feeling and what are the challenges personally in that leadership role. And then throughout, it's really a cross-cutting kind of aspect to this whole afternoon. Rick has been supporting Generations Peace with coaching, not just to me, but to our senior management team. So he brings a different dimension, a kind of an external coach perspective to the whole story that we're going to narrate. So that's the structure. I just want to share this beautiful photo of Rick and his wife, Teresa, in Jordan. That was Rick's second visit.
Nice legs.
Rick is the ugly one on the right, out of the four characters in the picture. Top right, yeah, just to be clear. But I want to take the opportunity in front of you all to really thank Rick for all the work you've been doing with our team, and to pass on our thanks to Teresa, your wife, who also came to Jordan on a holiday and got cajoled into helping our human resource team, providing lots of advice. Thank you very much. So we're going to dive in. We're going to try and make this action-oriented, but I feel I need to give you some information to set the context of what our organisation does. So we're going to begin with this external dimension, our global mission directed at social change. And I think a good place to start is what do we believe in? What is our purpose in the world? We believe a more peaceful world is possible. It's quite an important starting statement. And we want to make it happen. We want to support that to happen, to be actualised now and for future generations. That's captured in our name. We believe sustainable peace requires all sorts of different things, including transforming conflict at the grassroots in communities. So there are other pieces of the puzzle that are more security orientated or legal institution orientated, human rights orientated, but we believe our contribution working at the grassroots in communities is one necessary piece of the puzzle. We believe in the enormous potential of young people, and our work is primarily engaging young people in their own communities to lead change and really unlocking that potential. And we believe in measuring everything we do so that we can learn and adapt and improve our impact and sustainability. So we have a mantra of you can't measure it, we shouldn't be doing it. So that's also been part of our journey. We're a peace-building organisation, but really the accessible way to understand what that's all about is that all of our work in different contexts, different countries around the world, we've been working in 50 countries over the last 10 years, it's about promoting these four values. So the first one is youth leadership. This idea that we want to unlock that potential, that unique potential that is often overlooked, and to work with youth, not do stuff to them or for them, but really engage youth and support them, mentor them, so that they can lead actions in their own communities. The second value is community empowerment. This idea, firstly, that we're operating at community level. So we're not interested in or engaged in peace building between nation states or governments signing bits of paper. This is very localized, grassroots actions in communities. And we want to support community decision making. We want to work through strong existing structures in communities. And we really want to prioritize a demand-driven, bottom-up, responsive approach to supporting communities to actualize their own ambitions. Third value is active tolerance. So in our peace-building world, we often get into identity issues, cultural violence, conflict divides, and we want, of course, to foster greater tolerance, respect, understanding, trust across conflict divides, but we believe that has to be an active process, and also the outcome, active tolerance, must be active. It's not enough for me to sort of tolerate you over there, but I don't really want to engage with you. What we're trying to foster is an understanding of the value of engagement, the value of diversity, and embracing diversity as a strength, and giving people experiences of that. So making it an active process, so they experience the value, and then it becomes part of their own value set. So very active oriented. And the fourth value is responsible citizenship. This idea, again, not about national citizenship and what passport you may carry, but at the local level, in a community, in a village setting, a neighbourhood, you're a citizen of your community, and you have a role to play to contribute to the future of that community. You have an opportunity to apply your talents, your skills, your networks, your resources to support the broader community future. But it's not just an opportunity, it's really a responsibility, a shared responsibility. And this one links back nicely to the youth leadership idea that even youth have a really important role to play as responsible citizens in their own community.
Mark, can I ask, your mantra is still resonating with me.
Yes.
The measurement.
If you can't measure it, we shouldn't be doing it. Yeah.
No, that's great. And I think it's also related to PD and other. But will you go give us some examples later in your...
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
So I'll try and get through the introduction, and then if there's questions, I know that this is going to be quite a lot of new information and a new environment for many of you. We have concrete exercises we want to get into, where we really want to tap into the diverse experiences and knowledge in the room. And so I'm trying to give you the bare minimum information we think is enough to take the room to where we want to get you, so that you can help us. It's very selfish.
Good.
Okay. So with those four values in mind, we have lots of stories and examples around the world. We've been working over the last 10 years across the Middle East and North Africa, parts of Sub-Saharan Africa, parts of Asia, the Caucasus and Balkans. In Jordan, working on violence in schools, also working on Syrian refugee crisis. This one's in Kyrgyzstan, Jamal working on inter-ethnic violence. In northern Nigeria, working on inter-religious violence, Christian and Muslim violence, but also working on empowerment of girls and women. In Sri Lanka, working on post-conflict reconciliation work, identity-based conflicts. In South Sudan, working on conflicts in the youngest nation state on the planet, between Dinka and Noor tribal identities. In Zimbabwe, working with youth because they're mobilized to participate in violence as part of youth wings of political parties. So those are some of the stories. I want to bring it to life a bit with one video. And Doreen's here. This is a video from the Lebanese context. And the video is in Arabic with English subtitles, which also makes it a bit more real for you all. I hope it's going to load.
It's coming from... It takes some time.
It's buffering.
We have time.
Quick bit of context. So Lebanon, approximately 1 in 4 people is a refugee. Think of what that means even amongst this group. Think of what it means in your community, your village, your neighbourhood, in your city. 1 in 4 people is a refugee. The pressures on host communities are immense. Every public service, every economic endeavour, informal and formal, social, education, health services. In Jordan it's about 1 in 5, similar context. In Turkey it's slightly less, but huge numbers of refugees. Sorry, this was working just during lunch.
لبنان بلد كتير صغير، ولما صارت الأزمة الفلسطينية ومن بعد الأزمة السورية صار من أصل كل 4 في واحد لاجئ بلبنان. هذا الشيء اللي صعب الوضع أكثر بين المجتمعات بلبنان.
أنا كشاب فلسطيني قربت أخلص مدرسة، أول شيء محبط، وحتى إنه ما عندي أمل شو مستقبلي رح يكون.
يمكن أنا من قبل ما كان عندي الجرأة الكافية إني أقدر اندمج مع أشخاص من جنسيات مختلفة، كنت بفضل إنه ضلني مع أشخاص من جنسيتي أنا اللبنانية مثلي.
بواجه صعوبة بقلة فرص العمل وقلة فرص التعلم وصعوبة بالخروج من المخيم.
أنا بشوف إنه الحكومة اللبنانية هي عم تحاول تحمي أبناء اللبنانيين بأوضاع أمنية وأوضاع اقتصادية، لأنه مثلاً إذا كل اللاجئين من فلسطينية أو من سورية قدروا يحصلوا على فرص عمل بلبنان، مش رح يبقى فرص للناس اللبنانية المحليين بالبلد.
أنا دخلت الفصائل المسلحة لأنه كنت بحاجة لمصاري وكنت كتير محظوظ إني قدرت أطلع منها، بس بزعل على الشباب اللي من عمري اللي بدخلوا من اليأس اللي بالنسبة.
فبعدني لهلا بس اتفرج حوالي بشوف قديش في تحيز بين الشباب. لهيك برنامج أجيال السلام برنامج كثير مهم، خاصة من خلال أنشطة الفن والرياضة اللي استعملوهم كطريقة كخطوة أولى فينا نقول تيدمجوا فيهم هول الشباب قبل ما نبلش بمواضيع حساسة أكثر وقوية أكثر من خلال جلسات حقوق الإنسان.
المجتمعات هون مش كتير مختلطة مع بعض، ولما أول ما بلشنا مع GFP كنا كل حدا لحال، الفلسطينيين لحال، اللبنانيين لحال، السوريين لحال، بس مع الوقت صرنا كلياتنا مع بعض، كلياتنا مختلطين مع بعض.
بتأمل من هذا البرنامج إنه يساعد الشباب أكثر يفهموا دورهم ببناء مجتمعاتهم، كيف يعملوا تغيير إيجابي، كمان يخفف من خطر انتمائهم لمجموعات متطرفة ممكن إنها تهدم البلد.
أنا بأمن إنه كل إنسان بغض النظر عن الجنسية، الديانة، الطائفة، وبالنهاية كلها مبادئ إنسانية.
بتمنى إنه الأجيال القادمة لما تقدر تتكاتف وتتضامن مع بعضها، ولما نوقف إيد بإيد ونتقبل الآخر بكل اختلافاته، نحن رح نحقق السلام ورح نوصل للسلام.
So that's just obviously one story of many. I think it's clear our peace building work, our social mission is definitely in this zone of complexity that I think we're all familiar with.
Yes.
But of course within our organisation, like any others, there are plenty of processes that we're trying to bring down to sort of codified structures and processes for efficiency. But the mission is certainly here. And so our work in that external environment is really about testing and experimenting and adapting, sometimes failing, and then building up and scaling up on success. And in our 10-year journey, we really describe it as a journey from passion to impact. So not just the passion we have as a small headquarters team supporting volunteers around the world, but really understanding our whole work is supporting people in communities who have a burning passion to address a local issue of conflict and violence that is part of their everyday lived experience. So they're really, really wanting to get a change in their own community, but very often they're lacking some structure, some knowledge, some tools, some access to resources in order to get the shift they want to see. So our mission is really supporting them to convert their passion to impact. And our journey has been about learning how to get better and better at doing that, to convert passion really to concrete, measurable, sustainable impact in communities around the world. We talk about peace building, but I think this at least is a helpful differentiation to make. Peace is not simply the absence of violence. In fact, in the academic literature of our field, That's known as negative peace. Of course, it's important, it's valuable, it stops people getting killed, but true peace building is the longer term and indeed continuous process of nurturing attitudes, institutions and structures which create and sustain peaceful societies. So our work is really about fostering positive peace, and that's why we're working at the grassroots and in particular with youth in communities. We find this cartoon extremely helpful, and I think it'll be meaningful for you in your work, in your organisations, in your personal relationships, but it's also very relevant in our peace building work, especially when so many conflicts are really identity related and people seeing the world in different ways and often being unable to acknowledge that there are more than one story, there's more than one truth in a situation. So bringing people together across conflict divides to understand the different realities that each person may have is really the nature of our work. We have a framework. This is the most complicated theoretical side of the whole day. I'm not going to go into it in too much detail, but it's really about digging from issues of violence into the patterns and the history. To help us dig, we have this structure looking at personal, relational, structural and cultural aspects of violence to help us get from the single episode really to the epicenter of the volcano. And that also helps us not just come up with a one solution for that one episode, stop the violence, but really transform relationships and ultimately think about the systems dynamics that are causing these episodes in repeated cycles of violence. And borrowed from CCC, and I learned so much, and Rachel, my tutor, is in the room, we grabbed so many models, so many different mental models from the CCC program and applied them directly in our trainings. And this is a really useful one, the 15% principle of local action. We've got young people in communities who want to change the world, but they don't have influence over the whole world, of course they don't. And so it's very liberating for them to understand that if they focus on their 15% and get some traction there, then they can begin to make meaningful, concrete progress on their own issue. We also talk about adaptive programming a lot, and we intervene wherever we can intervene at the beginning, and then take an adaptive stepping stone type process. And over our journey we've evolved different tools. We use sport-based approaches, arts-based approaches, advocacy, dialogue and economic empowerment tools at the appropriate moment along a journey with a community. So it's a long-term commitment in a community. We start where we can, but then we seize emergent opportunities as they pop up. And they pop up as we build more trust and credibility and relationships in a community. So often things that are possible after 2 or 3 years of programming in a particular place become possible that were not even foreseeable at the original start line. So that's very much the approach over multiple years of programming. And also it's adaptive in the sense of working along 2 axes. The vertical axis of influence. If you want to really get a change in a whole community, it's a complex human system, complex adaptive system, a social system, then you want to shift the influences in that system. That might be the fastest way to get a change in the whole system. But usually we don't have access to the influences, not at the beginning. We're engaging youth because they're often the most accessible for us. So again, back to start where you can. And we may start here. We may start with children or youth, sometimes even primary school children. But over years, to work from children and youth, maybe to their parents, and ultimately gain access to the real influencers, the traditional leaders, the tribal chiefs, the religious leaders in a community, and begin to engage with them. And so the different tools become important. We might be using sports and arts with young people, advocacy with parents, perhaps in economic empowerment activities with adults, but we'll be using dialogue for peace with leaders. And then along the horizontal axis, we have this phrase here, where it's not sufficient. If we really want to get a shift in issues of violence in communities, we must avoid dancing with the beautiful people. we've got to get beyond the usual suspects engaged in such programs who are the relatively privileged youth, the ones who perhaps have access to education and so on. We've got to really push out to the communities that are the most vulnerable and ultimately build trust to engage the people who are participating in violence. And again, that's usually impossible at the beginning. So start where you can, but push along both of these axes over multiple years of programming. And then internally, in the way we go about our work, this social mission, we've been keeping a focus on these four things over the last 10 years. Innovation, we must keep learning, we must keep experimenting because contexts are so fast changing, and we can learn from our own work and the monitoring and evaluation and research we do of our own work, but also constantly scanning what other organizations are doing in the peace building realm, in community development, in social change, and many other disciplines. And there's no shortage of good ideas from unexpected places. So innovation is really, really important. Quality of our people, both staff and volunteers, but also of our content, how we present it in terms of training and facilitation, and quality of all our processes in the organisation. Impact, which for us is not how many youth we trained. So what? What was the change in a community? Was violence reduced? Were relationships transformed? Were attitudes changed? Can we measure those things? Yeah. And that's the core of our work, linked with our research and development arm, the Generations Peace Institute, and making sure those impacts, you get a good change through a program, do the impacts stick? So are the changes sustainable? But also knowing in order to get sustainable changes, you have to be doing a lot of activities sustained over a long period of time. So is our model, is our cost model able to sustain long period of activities over time in order to get sustainable impacts? I want to turn to one more video now, which is an external perspective of our work, to give you a bit of external validation. And I'll let Jean-Christophe Mathias explain it.
Jean-Christophe Mathias, I'm the editor of the top 500 NGOs. We're based in Switzerland, Geneva. And NGO Advisor has been looking for a Generation for Peace for the last 3 editions. They're probably among the best NGOs in terms of progressing later in the ranking. Its model, in terms of peace building, is quite unique. And it's rooted in the Middle East, which is also a very good point, because they start from reality, they don't observe from far away. They're in the middle of a region that has many conflict and experiment a lot of violence. In this sector, so far, there weren't any NGO with such an innovative approach. So the sustainability, not just of the organization itself, but of its work, is higher than a Western-style NGO thinking from far away. The other thing which has been very critical in terms of innovation was a more bottom-up approach, but a true one, not just, we want to listen to you guys and then you do what we want. It seems to me and to us that Generation for Peace has been able to really set up a process where the people are in charge. Not only they are in charge, but after some time they do train others. Generation for Peace for us is a quite a poster boy in terms of peace building. I'm happy with the ranking. It's a really exciting NGO, and I'm looking forward for more.
So this ranking of all NGOs across all sectors, it's nice to be on a ranking. We take it with a healthy pinch of salt. In this year's ranking, we've moved up 4 places. So we're number 30 in the top 500 NGOs in the world. We're obviously the highest ranked Jordanian NGO, but we're also the number 2 peace building NGO in the world. So for a Jordanian organization that's just 10 years old, we're getting some recognition for for what we do and the way we go about it. I want to make this slightly experiential, but before I do, I want to make a link back to yesterday's presentation by Rachel and Fanula, because look at some of the words here. Having understood a bit of our model, and they were talking about collaboration in a network world, collaborative communities, encouraging people to continually apply their unique talents to group projects, Generations Peace volunteers in their own communities, to become motivated by a collective mission, that burning passion for an issue of violence in their everyday lived experience, not just personal gain, we're really a volunteer movement around the world. By marrying a sense of common purpose, and believe me, the common purpose is burning in communities, a supportive structure, so the knowledge transfer, the training, but also the mentoring support that we provide, in order to mobilize them with the appropriate expertise in flexible, highly manageable group work efforts. We're still learning what that really needs to be more and more effective, but we've got a programming structure that is robust, within which there is lots of flexibility. And I think that's the secret in these words. And whether that counts as a nice definition of agility, we like to think so, but we also recognize that we as an organization must continue to be scanning and monitoring and checking what is the next thing. What is the next thing that may make us even more effective? What is the next tool beyond the 5 tools we're currently using that we may experiment with in different contexts around the world? So thank you very much for that slide yesterday.
We should also say that the picture comes from Finula's NGO to do with children's education.
Oh, superb. Fanula, you're not in the photo, are you?
No, I'm not.
Okay,
It's in Katutura in Windhoek in Namibia.
Excellent. Thank you very much. It was a great link. What we want to do now, we're going to get into some group work, but to energize you for the group work, I'd like to ask for a bit of trust from you. This is not a very good room for the exercise I want to do, but I want to show you what a typical energizer might be in Generations Peace, albeit with these constraints. So can you stand up and tuck your chairs in just to give yourself a bit of space? Those of you in the front can find some more space out the front here. We're going to be moving around a little bit, but kind of on the spot. So this is an energizer. When we do it with more space, we call it the Ministry of Silly Walks. Those of you who are Monty Python fans, fans will be very familiar with that. Because of the limited space, we're being agile and responsive to the conditions. So we're changing it. It's not going to be walking, we're going to be dancing. So I want you to listen really carefully to the instructions. So we're going to make this Ministry of Dance instead of Ministry of Silly Walks. When I ask you to dance, I want you to dance on the spot, so not charging around the room, in as silly a manner as you can. And this is important because we want to let go of a lot of those inhibitions that we've got. We're going to be doing some work together. We want to kind of let go. So be as silly as you can be when you're dancing. Dance on the spot. Please, no casualties, no broken furniture, no injuries. But those are the only limits on how.
Turn the lights off.
On how. I want to see you, and I think Julie may want to film. But
We want a disco light.
the only limits are no damage to people or property. And I'm going to introduce 2 other instructions. So when I say dance, you're going to be dancing. When I say jump, you want to jump.